Welcome. It's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. It's the heart of the Central Valley of California, and Central Valley is the heart of California in general. It is a great day. I hope it's a great day for you. I hope you claim the day to be great for yourself before you even opened your eyes this morning, because that sets the intention for the day. And regardless of what life brings at us, we have a bigger God, a bigger venue of resolutions and solutions when we open ourselves up to it. And that's what New Thought, religious science, and science of mind and spirit, many of the other New Thought philosophies teach. And had someone ask me here the other day about when I do the show, how do I plan for the show? And truth be told, sometimes I plan on teaching from a specific book or part of a book. Sometimes I just pick up the Science of Mind textbook and I read and I share from it. Sometimes it's just whatever's on my heart in the particular moment, sharing new thought concepts and ideas. And I hope as you watch the shows, and I hope you are watching the shows, that, there will be things in the show that will touch you specifically. The blessing of this incredible principle that we call life, God, first cause, is that all of creation is so unique and individualized in its individualness. And that includes each and every one of us. And each and every one of us is still some part of the divine represented as itself and expressing through itself. And that's what makes life so exciting. When you realize that, God's not some far-off guy or some place or something far, far away from us. And heaven's not a place that you're going to go to when you die. But God is the creation and the creator. There's nothing apart from or separate from this divine. We call it a principle, we call it God, we call it consciousness or mind or life. It's an amazing thing. And in truth, we cannot really define it because the finite really can't grasp the infinite. But we can look at it and we can be amazed and wonder, and we can be amazed at the potential of what's available to us when we begin to recognize that there are so many things available to us. There were many spiritual teachers throughout the history of humankind, and they've all taught parts or a great part of this thing that we call New Thought. There were people in the latter part of the 19th century, the first part of the 20th century that compiled a lot of these ideas, but one of the more prominent compilers, if you will, a fellow that's near and dear to my heart was Ernest Holmes, Dr. Ernest Holmes, and he looked out into the spiritual sea, and he began to see that there were things that made sense from various different spiritual teachings and philosophies, and he began to collect these things, and he put them in a commonality, a uniform place where we can see them together and see them as a unity and see them as an understanding. And he called this religious science, science of mind and spirit, and he described it as a faith, a philosophy, a way of life. And so I'm going to start with what is the science of mind from living the science of mind. This is something that Ernest Holmes gave a presentation on, and I'm going to move on to one of the teachers that Holmes felt was the most profound of all the spiritual teachers in the past. So first off, what is the science of mind? Dr. Holmes says, the science of mind is an outgrowth of spiritual faith which people have had throughout the ages. Before science was conceived, the presence of God was felt. Before science, lost my place. Before even mental actions or reactions were analyzed, history was filled with instances of men and women who had experienced God. Now, I want you to contemplate that concept. Not just thought about God, not just shared the idea of God, but actually had an experience with this first cause, with this thing that we call life, with this thing that we call God. He goes on to say the science of mind is comparatively new, but the mental experience of the invisible universe is as old as the history of man. It is new in that for the first time in history, we have put together all findings which contribute to the establishment of man's relationship with the universe. And he's not talking about universe as just when we look at the stars, but he's talking about the entire universal creation, which includes our concept of the divine principle. He says, to that end, he may be able to apply, to the end that man may be able to apply his spiritual understanding to the everyday problems of human life. Be able to apply our understandings, our spiritual understandings, to the everyday problems of life. Now, how is it that we can apply spiritual solutions to problems of everyday life? Well, if you believe that there's material and then there's spiritual, and never the twain shall meet, then maybe it may be a little difficult. But if you have an understanding of and a belief in and a faith in a universality of oneness that is the allness of the Creator, and that includes the creation itself, that, in other words, we are spiritual beings having a physical expression in a universe that is a spiritual universe, which means that no matter where we look, the things that we look at, the material parts of our life, including the conditions and the experiences we have, are all part of the spiritual makeup of the allness of creation. I read somewhere that if we look at material things, what we call reality, and we believe that that is reality, then we have given in our belief and our understanding power to the material things as the end-all be-all in our life experience. Now, we all know that material things are limited. You know, there's only so much of this and so much of that, and when it's gone, and there's whole conversations about those kinds of thoughts and things. But consider this. If the material things are an expression of a spiritual consciousness in a physical form, that the true reality is still a spiritual reality, then the material aspect of all of creation is subject to the spiritual creator of all that is created. Now, science today, it's an amazing thing. Scientists today, and I say this on a regular basis, but they're looking out at the universe and they're saying, you know, best we can figure out, the universe is some kind of consciousness. Consciousness? What is consciousness? Well, consciousness is the same thing that you and I have and experience. Consciousness is what exists within our minds in this physical expression of our spiritual life experience. But consciousness is the creator behind it all. Now, we have to be careful when we think about consciousness, because oftentimes people begin to think about consciousness as if God, Spirit, is a thoughtful thinking beingness. In other words, contemplative. And that's not exactly the way it works out. Consciousness creates through thought, but all of what we would say that is the thought of Spirit of God is created or creative. In other words, if God thinks it, it becomes a reality, however that unfolds. And we can get kind of caught up in that, and that may be a talk for another time, but the idea is that being conscious beings, we are able, and we were given the gift of volition, we are able to express our consciousness within and through this spiritual beingness that we call our life, and in so doing, we become part of the creative process. In other words, as we think, as we believe, it is done unto us. So that sounds kind of familiar, doesn't it? As we think, as we believe, it's done unto us. As we think, as we believe, with the faith that we have in our belief, it's done unto us. There was a teacher at one time that taught that. There were other teachers, but I have one in mind in particular, and this is the one I was talking about at the beginning of the show. And Ernest Holmes had a lot of respect for all the religious and spiritual teachers that he knew of in his day, but there was one in particular that he felt was the most prominent of all teachers, that he felt really put together an understanding and then a teaching that packaged it, if you will, such that people could embody it and put that into practice in their day-to-day life experience, and experience life at a level theretofore had never been experienced, never even understood. He was a radical for his time. He was disruptive to the spiritual beingness and teachingness, but what he brought to the table changed the world. And what he taught has been handed down through the book we call the Bible, and there are some other texts that are associated with his teachings that often are referred to as the Apocrypha, books that have been known and then rediscovered, books that have been part of the literary library of humanity that people have understood. But there's a lot of stuff there. How they came to be associated with the text in the Bible or not associated, that's a story for a different time, but there's teachings within that as Dr. Holmes began to look out into the universe of spiritual teachings and what he could see made a lot of sense, and he compiled them into this thing we call religious science. Now, in what we call the textbook, The Science of Mind, and this coffee, you can get it out there off of Amazon or Divorce or any other seller of books. If you happen to be associated with a New Thought Center, you can probably get it from their bookstore. This much of the book teaches the science of mind, and then there's glossary and stuff in the back. But at the end, and I've shared this with many people, it's one of my more favorite parts of the book. It's called The Final Conclusion. It's on page 423. And I'm not going to read you the whole thing, just the one paragraph that it begins with. Dr. Holmes says, in conclusion, what the world needs is spiritual conviction, followed by spiritual experience. There's that word again, experience. Okay? I would rather see a student of this science prove its principle than to have him or her repeat all the words of wisdom that have ever been uttered. And he goes on to say, it is far easier to teach the truth than it is to practice it. And those are powerful words. It's much easier in your life. How much easier is it to tell someone else how they need to live when you still have stuff within your own household that you need to clean up, right? We know that story, and I'm not going to go there. But in the next section, there's a section that oftentimes, as a minister of religious science, I refer people to that have come that like the idea of what New Thought, Science of Minds teaches about the ability that we have, the idea that we express the divine principle as ourselves, and our ability to, with right thinking and consciousness, create within our own life experience the life experience of peace, harmony, and abundance that we were each entitled to live and experience, until we get to one thing. And oftentimes this comes from what they feel is harshness in their own past experience, and I'm not going to go into it, but they have difficulty when we begin to refer back to the book that we call the Bible. They feel like, what they were taught just didn't align with what they believed, and I'll leave it at that. But there's great teaching in there when you begin to look at it not as a literal history book, not as something to beat somebody up with, but something that teaches truths that are so powerful and so awesome that when you begin to understand them and put them into practice in your life, that they are life-changing. And again, we'll cover some of that I've got a lot of stuff I'm going to cover in other shows. But today, in the Science of Mind textbook, the fifth part 5, under Teachings, is entitled From the Teachings of Jesus. And I'm going to leave it right there. We're going to take our first break, and we're going to pick it up when we come back. There's so much to learn from this. I'll see you then. Tell us about this.
Okay, so this listing is over in Woodward Lakes.
Ooh,
it is
nice.
at 10595 North Seacrest in the 93730. It is a quick walk to the clubhouse where you have a junior Olympic sized pool, clubhouse facilities, gym, and those views you just saw of the lake.
Right.
This home has been completely remodeled downstairs. You see the nice kitchen.
Yeah,
very
nice.
custom kitchen, lifetime warranty on the cabinets, granite, beautiful, gorgeous granite in the kitchen counters, newer bathrooms. It's actually vinyl plank flooring that can withstand a lot more, puppy scratches. There's,
It is
it doesn't.
family friendly.
It
as
is
they say.
family friendly, exactly.
And that's a good thing.
Yes. It has a gorgeous pool in the backyard,
We
3
saw
bedrooms,
that,
2
yeah.
baths, 1,624 square feet
Nice
on a
size home.
corner cul-de-sac lot
Ooh,
in a gated community.
that sounds like a prime piece of property.
I think so.
What's the asking on that, eh?
The listing price is $375,000.
Cool. That's a great price for it. Once again, the address on that place.
That is 10595 North Seacrest Avenue in Fresno, 93730.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling, from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. I hope you enjoyed the show so far. Before I get into the teachings of Jesus from the Science of Mind textbook, I want to refer back to something. And if you contact me, you can message me through Facebook on New Thought Talk with Rev Steve or my Facebook page or whatever. I'll send you the link to this particular article, which is NBC magazine online or something like that. Anyway, this is from July of 2017 or June, and it says, the question is the universe consciousness? And it says some of the world's most renowned scientists are questioning whether the cosmos has an inner life similar to our own. Now, I'm not going to go into it beyond that. There's too many other articles out there like that, but because the show is live and I can do what I want to do, I wanted to share that with you. There is a lot of questions that are going on in the field of science today about the possibility that the universe is some kind of a consciousness. And consciousness, the action of consciousness, is something we call thought. And for the divine, thought is a creative force. And there's a law, we call it the law of cause and effect, that replies to the thought. And we'll get into that in another show. But anyway, from the teachings of Jesus, this is in the Science of Mind book, and it starts on page 427. And I'm going to go through and just read you some of the topic titles for as we go forward, and then we'll come back and we'll look at some of these. First is Dr. Holmes says why Jesus had such power. Second is man shall not live by bread alone. The meek shall inherit the earth. They that hunger shall be fed. Merciful shall obtain mercy. Pure in heart shall see God. The altar of faith. The Father who sees in secret. The secret of prayer. How God forgives. The single eye. The divine bounty. Judge not, lest ye be judged. And I think that'll be enough for today, if I can get through all of that. Let's talk about why Jesus had such power. According to Dr. Holmes, he says, he lived in a world of spiritual realization far beyond that which the average man has any understanding. In other words, this man, Jesus, he had a connectedness, a spiritual connectedness with the creation far beyond what most of us in our very, very farthest, wildest imagination could ever come to. But he had achieved it some way, somehow. He says, as spiritual things must be spiritually discerned, so the full meaning of his sayings can never be clear to us until we have obtained a consciousness equal to his. But in the record of his sayings, there is much which bears witness to our own belief. And, no doubt, could we penetrate the meaning of his teachings, we should have perfect explanation of our own philosophy. In other words, this individual however it happened, made a connectedness within consciousness to something far greater than he was. And those that believe that this is all done within ourselves, this was done within this man's Jesus, we call it the God within, or the Christ consciousness. And what we believe and understand is that this man was not the special singular example, or exception, but he was an example for all of humanity when we begin to realize that we too can make that connectedness. But we have to go within ourselves to do it. It's something that we've talked about in shows past. It can't be done for us by anybody. They can tell us about it, we can learn about it, we can intellectualize about it, but until we begin to experience it. And as we opened, and I was talking about it, this concept of experiencing the divine, experiencing God, this becomes so very important for us each and individually. And it's something that is available to us as we begin to walk our spiritual path, our journey. And so he goes on. The next one is, man shall not live by bread alone. It's not the physical reality, the physical world, that feeds us in our spiritual journey. And whether we realize it or not, our journey through this life, whether we choose to engage or not, whether we choose to be involved or to be ignorant, and sometimes ignorance is a choice in and of itself, and sometimes it's just the what is. That's not important. But as we pass through this particular life experience, we can begin to learn the truth of who we are, interact with that truth of who we are, experience the divine. And as we do that, we grow spiritually. And to grow spiritually brings us into a greater relationship, a greater harmony with the divine principle, with God. In other words, that we can begin to not only talk about God, not only think about God, we can feel the divine presence within us, and we can practice that, experiencing that in our day-to-day life experience. There's something in New Thought, religious science, that we call affirmative prayer treatment, and understanding how to pray in an affirmative way, not in a way of asking for help, but a way of declaring the truth of who we are, and knowing and having an expectation to see that demonstrated in our life is very freeing. You know, another one of those teachings of Jesus, when you know the truth will set you free. And this is part of the truth that Ernest Holmes was teaching. And he says, the next section he goes on, he says, the meek shall inherit the earth. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't see a lot of meekness in the world today. So what are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about just that, being meek, okay? He says, at the end of this, he says, what characteristics are set before us as being worthy? Have not faith and belief in the divine goodness been the theme of our greatest singers, our teachers, our spiritual people? Who could write a beautiful story about hell, he asked. But heaven and love have inspired thousands to the uplifting of humanity. Jesus was right when he said, the meek shall inherit the earth. They have done so and will continue to do so. And what he's talking about here is a frame reference, a mindset, if you will, of mental consciousness. And no, we're not seeing a lot of it out in the evening news. That is true. But there are a lot of people out there that have this understanding, that they don't meet the world each day in fear. They don't meet the world in doubt. They don't meet the world in anger. They don't meet the world questioning whether there's good to be experienced in the world. They meet the world with the declaration of the truth of who they are, that they are the divine expressed as him. And because we are God expressed as us, that we can go forth into the day and know that regardless of what life brings at us, no matter what issues that we may face, we have a bigger God. We have an infinite access to help. We have a greater goodness at the level of our belief, as we pray before we speak our words. Our Father, God, Spirit, whatever you want to call it, knows and will answer. This is what this man Jesus taught. Can you wrap your mind around that? Can you, for you personally, get a concept that this could apply to you in your day-to-day life experience? Or do you see the materiality of the world as being the real world, and spirituality is, well, it's something to be studied, hoped for, prayed about, but it's not part of my moment-to-moment daily life experience? I challenge you to look at life as a spiritual expression. It requires making a shift in consciousness, a shift in outlook, a shift in mindset, but it's something that each and every one of us can do. They that hunger shall be fed. If you begin to see that there's more good out there that was put here for you in potentiality, that hunger that you experience within yourself, all of us have a desire to experience life at a greater level. All of us have a desire to have more happiness. All of us have a desire to express and experience more love and peace and harmony in our life. We don't see a lot of it if we look out to the physical world. But the truth is, it's there. And the more of us that open our minds, the more of us that open our hearts, the more of us that see this as the real truth, the real reality, the greater this begins to express in what we call the physical world, which is just a material or objective representation of spiritual concepts and ideas. The merciful shall obtain mercy. When we think about this, we have to look at ourselves and ask, are we merciful people? Do we accept our fellow human beings as being sisters and brothers, as family? Do we wrap our minds around the idea of a unity of oneness, that in truth that we're all part of the greater consciousness that we call God? Do we have that within us? Well, we have it there as potential, but life tells us that we're separate. The minute that we begin to separate ourselves out, we've already separated ourselves from the divine truth, from the principle of oneness. And yet, if we stop and reflect, there's nobody that doesn't have that desire within themselves if they can really pause. People that tell us that we have to be something else other than what we are, is oftentimes they're driven by that desire to make everything as they define it a oneness, because they fail to recognize the truth of the oneness that already is. They do that because they're not connected within themselves to the source of their truth, the source of who they are. So, the merciful shall obtain mercy. Now, he goes on to say, can we expect in this world to receive full compensation for all of our work? Of course not. Now, this is key. This is a real interesting concept. Of course not. We are building on an eternal foundation, one that time cannot alter, nor experience destroy. Most of us look and evaluate what's going on with us under the definition of sometime between birth and the physical death of this body. But Holmes is talking about something far greater, something far more expansive. He's talking about something on an eternal nature. And you know, when we begin to realize that we are God expressing it as us, there is no beginning or end, that there is a continuation, there's a continuity. And as Holmes reached the end of his life, he was so sure and powerful about this in his teachings. And, you know, it cannot be any other way. If God is all there is and God is expressing as us, then at no time do we ever cease to exist. But we do evolve, we do move on. So, when we define things within the limitations of this physical life, we can get, you know, our ego, our rational mind can get wrapped up in that, and we begin to see limitation, lack, and separation. I'm looking at the clock. I got to take a break. I'll see you when we come back. We'll pick this up, limitation, lack, separation, and we'll move forward.
This 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Clovis is now for sale. Nestled on a cul-de-sac in a planned unit development, the quiet neighborhood is near Sierra Vista Mall, grocery stores, and Clovis Unified Schools. This well-maintained home featuring an open kitchen with a breakfast bar, dining area, a family room with fireplace, ceiling fans, vaulted ceilings, and inside laundry room. The large master suite has 2 large closets, a roomy bathroom with shower, and exterior door leading to the patio. Located near the intersection of Gettysburg and Fowler Avenue, call Mike Briggs Properties at 559-486-6758 to buy this home today.
The Saga of Bridget and Amanda by Carol Love Forbes brings to life the struggles of historical women in early America. Find the Saga of Bridget and Amanda on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and order your copy today.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Well, welcome back to New Thought Talk. Gordon, hello. Thanks for joining us on the show today. I hope you're enjoying what we're sharing. So I was talking about this idea that life is not limited to our physical expression, but is an eternal experience because we are the divine principle expressing as each and every one of us. And for a lot of people, that concept may be a little bit difficult, but it's the only logical conclusion if God is all that is. So moving forward, he says, the pure in heart shall see God. Now, what does it mean when the pure in heart shall see God? Weren't we talking about having an experience with this divine principle? We all know, or at least most of us know, that we have our issues, our less than pure experiences, thoughts, activities in our life, let's say. But when we decide to move forward, when we decide to create a spiritual path and experience for ourselves, you know, it's an amazing thing. We don't necessarily start there and have to go back and do penance for things that we've done wrong. Now, there may be issues that we need to rectify and clarify. That's not what I'm talking about. But what we do is we start right where we're at in this moment, with all our warts and whatever, and we begin to move forward, you know, and as we do that, the things that we need to address, we get around to addressing them. No doubt about it. We begin to realize and know that maybe there's things that we have to do. But the idea of karma coming back and catching us is something that Holmes addressed in quite a bit of his writings, and, you know, the idea of the law of cause and effect. We can transcend our, if you will, our karmic debt by creating a new consciousness and moving forward and transcending the old consciousness that kept us limited and kept us into that limiting belief. We can move beyond that. The pure in heart shall see God. He says, the pure in heart shall see God. Can we ever see God? Is there any news of heaven other than that which comes through our own thought or through the thought of another? Who thinks purity sees it. In other words, where we start right now. And they, as they see it, they are beholding God. The face of the Ancient of Days on looks eternity, and the upward glance ever sees this reality in all things. The pure in heart not only shall see God, but do see God. In other words, as we move forward into our life experience on a spiritual path, and we begin to consciously make choices, decisions to do and be in alignment with principle, and not be subject to the limitations of that life tells us that we're subject to, and all of a sudden we have to do some things. We have to make some mental shifts. Things like acceptance has to become our daily life experience. You know, we've grown up with our concepts of, you know, who is good and who is bad, and we've talked about this in other shows. Acceptance means acceptance. And I go back once again to the the two great commandments that this man Jesus gave, the man that we're talking about his teachings today, when he said, love God with all that you are and love your neighbors as yourself. And he didn't have any exclusions in that. That doesn't mean, again, that we have to accept bad behavior. That's not what I'm talking about. But we have to know that the individuals, all of experience, all of reality is still God expressing. People can do what we call bad things for sure. When they do those things that harm, that limit some other person. But we can put boundaries up. We can see them as someone they're struggling. They don't know the truth of who they are. We can love them. Sometimes when we just address things at that level, at that nature, people change. Their whole life changes. Sometimes people have to be put away for the safety of society because for whatever reason, they can't get it in their heart right now. They can't get it in their mind right now, but they're going to at some time because we are infinite beings. As I said before, we extend beyond this physical birth and this physical death to something far beyond, and we shall all at some point in time in the universality of whatever, the time thing is in the divine principle, we're all going to get to that same place. And it's a place of good, of love, and peace and harmony. We have to take ourselves out of limited thinking that life is only what exists in this physical plane, because life is so much more and goes beyond so much more. So moving forward, we get into this idea. The next is titled The Altar of Faith. And he says, again, Jesus tells us that our gifts brought to the altar of life are unacceptable. Our gifts brought to the altar of life are unacceptable while there is aught between us and our fellow man. He says, here is a hard saying. We cannot always please our fellow man. Human experience has taught that this is impossible. Human experience has taught that this is impossible. And when we tie ourselves solely to human experience, it becomes an impossibility. He says, what attitude then are we to assume? This, whether we please or whether we displease, we need have no personal animosity towards others. We need have no personal animosity towards others. Love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Wow, that can be a big bite for a lot of us. All you have to do is pick up the evening news and you go, are these people, whoever these people are, capable of loving their neighbors as they love themselves? The truth be told, they are. We all can do that. When we decide to put down our judgments, our bigotry, and believe me, there's enough bigotry on all sides of whatever's going on in the world to do a lot of damage. But we can all put it away. We can begin to recognize that there's a truth, one truth. I can't tell you that I know all the truth, but I know that there's one ultimate truth behind all that is. And in that truth is an understanding of peace and harmony. In that truth is an understanding of love. In that truth, as this master teacher has taught us, that there is a oneness, that we are it expressing as us, and that we are to love it as we love ourselves, and we love ourselves as we love our neighbors, and we love ourselves. This idea of love it's a universal connectedness, if you will. And it's a love far beyond what most people understand, but most of us, if we give time to and we pursue it, we can experience it at some level. And when we do experience it at some level, we realize at that point that we have experienced the divine principle, that which we call God, in our own lives. That's awesome. It's truly awesome. And it changes our lives. And as it changes our lives, lives around us change and the world changes. And that's the great secret behind this. And he goes on now, he says, the Father who sees in secret. And he's talking about here the things that we do for good. And this is a great teaching, because so many times we want to, if we're spiritual and we belong to a center or a church, we want to tithe at a great amount and let everybody see, what great givers we are. But if no one's around, maybe we don't do so much. Or, we want to publicly go out and do great charitable things. But when no one's around, we don't give much thought to it. It's not about what comes back to us in recognition. It's what is about within us as we do the work. And we can do that work in little ways and in big ways. We can be seen or we don't have to be seen, because it's not about the works we do, it's about the attitude that we bring. And the attitude we bring cannot be seen by anybody, but is known by the divine which is within us. When we have a loving heart, when we have a giving heart, when we go forth into the world to seek and see a greater good and to bring and to serve greater good into the world around us, again, we create a greater world of greater good. Maybe in just little levels. Maybe it's just like that butterfly effect. You do one little thing for one little person that maybe you'll never see them again, but they'll never forget it. Because you did that for them or to them, they share that experience again and again and again. And it's so very important. It says, the next section is the secret of prayer. And this is a great teaching. He says, the secret of prayer and its power in the outward life depends upon an unconditioned faith in and reliance upon an inner presence. Have faith and rely upon an inner presence. We must enter the closet. That is, we are to shut out all else, believing prayer has power, not through repetition, but by belief and acceptance. By belief and acceptance. Faith, belief, and acceptance. When we speak what we call speaking our word, when we quietly go within ourselves and we open ourselves up to something greater than we are, and we recognize the truth and the relationship and the experience of the oneness that we are. And we know that we know when we speak our word that there's something that responds as we speak our word, as we are aligned with principle. So we are aligned with principle. In other words, we can't go into that secret place if we got a lot of judgment and bigotry. We can't go in that secret place if we're really angry and hostile. We've got to let all that go. We let it go and go into that place, quiet, peaceful, and loving in alignment with principle. When we speak our word, there's something that responds. Now, it responds if we bring anger and all sorts of disruptions, but it doesn't necessarily respond in the way that we want, but it does respond. And you better be careful. You'll get what you ask for, even if you're not aware that you're asking at that point in time. It says how God forgives. It's the next section. God forgives as we forgive. We go back to what's called the Lord's Prayer. When we go, give us our daily bread, and we forgive us our trespasses. That's the way it goes. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. Or, depending on which translation, it may be, forgive us our debts as we forgive those who owe us debts. Either way you look at it. Letting go of the hate, letting go of the stories, letting go of all this stuff, and just the thing about forgiveness. Ultimate forgiveness is an ultimate acceptance of love for all, and it's a great, powerful healingness. But we can't get there if we want to hang on to our stuff, if we want to hang on to our story, if we want to hang on to our belief in limitation, if we want to hang on to our judgments. We have to let all that go. These are great teachings as we walk our spiritual path. The single eye. He says, if your eye is single, you shall be filled with light. Having a single eye is having that eye focused on divine principle, focused on God, focused on harmony, focused on being alignment in your day-to-day life experience with that good. Being single of purpose, being single of eye. We got our last break coming up. We're going to take our break, come back, and we'll wrap this up. We will get through the last part of this. Judge not, lest ye be judged. Hang on, because that's always a good one. I'll see you when we come back. Contact David Sprinkle at Century 21 Denton Realty to buy this beautiful home in Yosemite Lakes Park. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and over 2,900 square feet. Dave can help you with your real estate needs in Fresno, Madera, and Mariposa counties and surrounding areas. When you need a realtor, call Dave Sprinkle at 559-285-9785.
Diane Ainsworth's books of poetry and scriptures are available at condiopress.com and as ebooks at amazon.com. Diane hopes the words in her books will convey the unconditional love Jesus has for you. Learn more at godsinspirationsblog.wordpress.com and get a copy of Diane's books today. Protect yourself by letting private investigator Michael Morgan Clark get the facts you need in matters of infidelity and divorce, corporate investigations, criminal defense, workers' comp, child parental abduction, wrongfully accused. Michael Morgan Clark will investigate anyone. Call 559-785-1900 or visit clarkinvestigations.com.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California. Moving forward, we talked about the single eye. You know, as we wrap this up for today, if you go through this section of the Science of Mind book, it's like Dr. Holmes is taking us down a path where each one of these segments is like a signpost on that path, that as we seek to be more in alignment with principle, if you will, as we seek to put the principles of the science of mind into practice in our day-to-day life experience, that each one of these different topics help to peel back another layer of the onion, help us to get a little bit closer, help us to have a greater understanding of that which exists within us and responds to us, as he says, at the level of our belief. But you cannot believe that something is there if you hold judgment, if you are tied to things outside yourself and all these different things. So as we go through this, you know, it's like we're working into our heart experience, if you will, almost. He says, this next segment, he says, the divine bounty. He says, as God cares for the birds who do not gather into barns, so shall we be cared for if we trust and do not doubt. But we are to seek the kingdom first. We are to seek the kingdom first. The gift is given in potential, but we have to seek it. He says Jesus bade us to completely trust in God for everything and in every instance. He had a complete reliance upon God. Dare we say that such a confidence will be misplaced? Have we ever tried it? Until we've had tried it and failed, we are not in a position to contradict this theory. If you've looked at this and you said, no, it's not for me, I don't believe it, that's fine. You can believe what you want. But you can't say it doesn't work because you haven't tried it. Putting it into practice is not an intellectual exercise. It is a faith, a philosophy, and it is a way of life. You know, the great thing about this is, as this faith and philosophy and this way of life, although there are certain things that may not exactly align with a particular spiritual practice that you grew up with, truth be told, that all these principles can be put into practice regardless of what your denomination is, if you will, your spiritual association. Begin to put them into practice and you can see them unfold. Now I'm going to move on. And we're going to close this last part of this last segment here with judge not, lest ye be judged. You know, he gives a fair amount of print to this, and for most people, that seems to be where we get caught up. Because, you know, judgment's one of those things that, okay, we get the big thing, all right? You know, we shouldn't dislike people for, you know, all the various reasons. But let's ratchet it down a little bit. when we talk about politics? Is somebody feeling a little bit tense as we talk about politics? Judge not, lest ye be judged. Now, that doesn't mean that there is one political right way or wrong way. That's not what I'm saying. What it means is that as we approach politics, we approach it with love and no judgment. That we can have conversations without hostility, anger, and hate. Before you jump up and say, well, they won't. It's not about them. See, we have to get over the they issue when it comes to judgment, whether it be politics, whether it be a family feud, whether it be a neighborhood feud. Heck, it could even be a high school feud, with another high school, and we see those happen too. Judge not, lest ye be judged. By whatever measure you judge, by that very measure you shall also be judged. How harsh are you when you judge those people? Because as you point your finger at them, you're also including yourself in that. It can be tough. Let's explore this a little more, see what Holmes has to say. He says, judge not that ye be judged, for with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged, and what measure you met, it shall be measured to you again. He says this statement could come only from one who had a deep insight into the universal law of cause and effect. And that's what we've really been talking about through this whole show today. This one law of cause and effect. For cause always has an effect. He says, it balances everything and sees that in the long run, everyone, and there are no exceptions, everyone receives his or her just due. This law, Emerson called the High Chancellor of God. The law of cause and effect is the law of perfect balance, of logical sequence, and of inevitable consequences. Whatever a person sows, so shall they reap. If we sow hate, we reap hate. If we sow love, we reap love. If we sow goodness, we reap goodness. If we sow it and we look for a response in a shortened time frame and we don't get it, then we really haven't given it. Because when you give, you've got to give. And once we give, we let it go. Just like when we go to God in that secret place within ourselves and we begin to pray and affirm, we give thanks in gratitude, because a grateful heart is a heart that is in alignment with divine principle. And God does provide. God does bless. God does give. But we also let it go. Letting it go, I don't know about you, but for me, that was kind of one of those hard things. Letting it go. You always, if I could, you want to keep your fingers in the pie, because who knows? God may not get it. I mean, that's the bottom line, right? I see this, I know I can do it, and I asked God, but God didn't show up, but I can do this. And oftentimes as I get into doing it, what I end up doing is end up with not having it at all, or not experiencing it at all. And the reason being is because I've chosen to hang on to it. I never really turned it over to divine principle. I said, I'm giving it to you, God, but that's not what my actions spoke to. My actions said, yeah, but. Consider this: fear, doubt, worry. Those are all denials. How can we say we give it over to God and then deny what we've just done through fear, doubt, worry? You can add a whole bunch of other things to that. When we give it up in thanksgiving, we're saying to divine principle, I'm aligning with you in purpose. I'm aligning with you in consciousness. I'm aligning with you in spirit. I'm aligning with you in belief and faith. And I'm giving it all to you in confidence, faith, and belief, knowing that it is done, knowing that before I finish speaking my words, you have answered. That was the consciousness that this man that we call Jesus the Christ had when he walked the face of the earth. That was the consciousness that he brought and he taught. That is the consciousness when Dr. Holmes began to read the teachings that this man taught. And he said, you know, these all make perfect sense. They align with principle. They align with spiritual teachings that are far more ancient. And when we put them into practice in our lives, we not only change our lives for ourselves, but we change the lives of the world around us and the world beyond the world around us. That's the power that God has given to each one of us. That's the gift of life as we experience it. But most of us, it's done unto us at the level of our belief, and life has told us, you know, only so much, and so we've chosen only to believe so much. Can we make a different choice? And the ultimate power that God has given to each and every one of us is that power of choice. Change your thinking, change your life is about making different choices. Look out in the world today that you are experiencing. Is that the world that you want to continue to experience? If you're experiencing lack, limitation, if you're experiencing unhappiness, if you're experiencing loneliness, if you're experiencing anything that is less than abundance, health, beauty, harmony, peace in your day-to-day life experience, if you're experiencing anything less than that, I'm here to tell you that there's a gift waiting for you, but you have to accept the gift. You have to make the choice. Choice is a powerful thing. Thought is the action of consciousness, and you have the ability to think. You create that action in consciousness. There is a law of cause and effect that responds, and it responds to you at the level of your belief, my friends. It's a powerful teaching, powerful tool. It's available to each and every one of us as we breathe, as we walk, as we experience every moment of our life. I hope you enjoyed today. I had a good time sharing this with you. I'll see you when we come back next time. Know as you go through the week that the light of God surrounds you. The love of God enfolds you. The power of God protects you. The presence of God watches over you. And before we close, know you can get a hold of me through New Thought Talk, private message me, or Steve Walling on Facebook. And I do respond, answer, and I do take prayer treatments for people that need them and want them in their life's experience. I'll see you next week. Blessings, my friends. Bye.
At Laulea Travels, we strive to make your vacation experience as relaxing as possible. From the time you start dreaming about it to the time you're sharing your vacation photos with your friends and coworkers. Our vow is to treat your vacation as if it were our own. If personal service, attention to detail, and years of travel experience are important to you, then let Laulea Travels plan your next dream vacation. Visit lauleatravels.com or call 559-360-1933.
Certifying foster homes for placement of children suffering from abuse, neglect, and abandonment. To help, contact Lisa Caceres with Angels of Grace at 559-268-0000.
Support Angels of Grace. Attend the Luau of Love Saturday, September 22nd at Arte Americas. For more information and tickets, go to angelsofgrace.com.
Looking for work? Tired of minimum wage? For as low as $200, become certified as a forklift driver at the Certified Forklift Training Center. Call 559-325-8097 or visit cftc.net.
Do you or a loved one have memory problems or mild Alzheimer's disease? Then you may be interested in the Daybreak ALZ Clinical Research Study. The Daybreak ALZ study is a clinical research study for people with memory problems or mild Alzheimer's disease. The study will examine an oral investigational drug that may have some effect on the brain changes associated with Alzheimer's disease. The study is designed to find out whether this investigational drug or study drug can slow down the decline in memory and mental functioning. If you're interested in participating in the study, contact Neuropain Medical Center at research@neuropain.com or call 559-437-9700, extension 310.
CentralValleyTalk.com.